Are you ready to proceed, Attorney Hitchcock Cross, or do you want a few minutes?
What's the pleasure of the tribunal here?
Well, if you're ready to proceed, I'm ready to go, but I understand that you feel that you were thrown a curveball, and I want to give you the opportunity to take some time with your client if you feel that's necessary.
Well, no, I mean, we've been sandbagged, but we'll continue to work. We'll go forward on a protest now. I think that's the best thing to do. We'll do the best we can,
Okay.
understanding that we may have to come back here again. Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to take a brief second here to review what the last question I asked was.
Okay, certainly.
Darren, I don't know if you want to do this now or if you should just have it in our motions, but there are actually additional discovery responses that would be relevant. Do you want those here or just brought up in the motion?
Excuse me. I can't possibly.
If we can bring up all the discovery issues at one time.
Perfect. Thank you.
There's rules. There's chapter 227. I mean, this motion practice. Come on. So yeah, that's cool. I'm here. They're going to talk about us without us being here. Light duty. All right. Are you ready, Ms. Paul?
Yes.
All right. All right. So we already covered that you know who Ms. Zillig is, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you call her Molly, is that right?
Yes, that's her first name.
Okay. And you don't call her Attorney Zillig, for example, right?
No.
No. Okay. So, have you seen this document now? The document that you reviewed on Monday, have you seen it today now?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have it on the screen in front of you?
No, but I can pull it up if need be.
Please.
Actually, perhaps if council could pull it up so that we're all looking at the same document.
No.
Okay. Ms. Paul, are you able to share your screen?
Yes.
Thank you.
Otherwise, I'm able to share my screen as well. So
Thank you, Your Honor.
Whatever works
Mhm.
better for the parties.
Great. So before we get to that document, let's ask a few other preliminary questions.
Excuse me, but will I be sharing the document or will you?
What are you more comfortable with, Ms. Paul?
I can share my screen. That's fine.
Okay. All right.
Great.
Okay.
So during the break here, you know what I'm talking about? This was from about noon to 1:30 today.
Yes.
Did you communicate with anybody?
I had on this call.
Did you communicate with anybody?
Yes.
Who did you communicate with?
A few different individuals. I was resuming my work duties.
Okay. Who were those individuals?
I communicated with a captain, a deputy sheriff applicant, a pre-employment manager, my manager, and an HR assistant.
Okay. Who was the captain?
Captain Carlson.
Okay. Who was the manager?
Arvis Williams.
Arvis. Okay. And when I see on page 3 of this document that you provided to me, discussed in greater detail with Arvis, is that the same person you're just talking about?
Yes.
Okay. What did you discuss with Arvis during our break?
I discussed the status of a deputy sheriff applicant. I informed her I was on break from this hearing, but I anticipated it would be proceeding.
Okay. Now, when you pulled up this document and you sent this to myself, Judge Molitor, and Ms. Lawrence, correct?
Yes.
Okay. How did you find that document?
I went into my electronic records where I keep records of investigations.
Okay. So you looked to the original document, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And we're clear that you sent this document to the Corporation Counsel, correct?
I believe I did, yes.
Okay. Would you have, how would you have sent that? By what means?
I typically send communications via email.
Okay. And have you checked your email on this matter at any time?
Today,
At
I
any
have
time?
not.
No, okay. But for you to determine who you emailed it to, all you would have to do is to, that would be a fairly easy matter, correct?
I would need to check my email.
Okay. And you haven't done that yet, right?
I have not.
Okay. A judge, would it be appropriate to ask her to do that right now? I mean, she's obviously sitting in front of her computer. Can we just get that answer?
Is that something you can do, Ms. Paul?
Let's stop sharing my screen and see if I can locate that quickly.
Thank you.
Okay, I have that information.
Okay. Will you share it with us, please?
I sent it to Mary Yu, an employee in the Professional Standards Division, on September 15th of 2021.
Okay. Anybody else?
No,
Okay. And what date was that? September 15th of 2021?
yes.
Uh-huh. That's September 15th. Okay. And are you aware whether or not Mr. Lucky had been terminated any time?
I do not recall his termination date.
Okay, but are you aware of whether or not he's been terminated?
It's my understanding he was discharged, yes.
Okay. And are you aware prior to his discharge whether or not he had been suspended at any time?
If he was up for charges for discharge, he would have been suspended pending a hearing.
Okay, and do you know what date that would have happened?
I do not.
Is it possible that it's September 16th, the next day?
I would have to check the records to verify.
And you have those records, is that right?
I would have to pull up his electronic file in a separate system.
Okay. What system is that?
That would be on base for his personnel file.
Okay. And I think I've seen this name before, but it was something Yu, her last name. Why? How do you spell her last name? The person who you sent this document to.
YU.
YU. Okay. And her first name is Mary?
Correct.
Okay. Do you know what her position or role is?
She is the office manager, so to speak, over in the Professional Standards Division.
Great. What's her relation to James Novotny, please? In the organizational structure. Sorry.
She reports to Captain Novotny.
Oh, okay. Okay. And this is the same Captain Novotny who's the head of professional services, correct?
Professional standards, yes.
Standards. Okay. So if somebody had been charged, let's put it like this. Do you know of a way to terminate a deputy without involving professional standards?
No.
No. Okay. So it's your testimony that you gave this document to Mr. Novotny's assistant. Right?
Correct.
Okay. Pause 1 second. All right, so we're going to try to get a document to get in front of you that sort of clarifies when Mr. Lucky would have been suspended here. Okay, so Deputy Lucky files a complaint with Internal Affairs against Sergeant Gladney due to the alleged threat that he had received. Do you see that part?
Would you like me to share my screen again for a copy of that document?
I have it. The judge has it. Miss Lawrence has it. I mean, if you want to share it with the public, by all means, let's do that. I'll put it up. And I think they'll like to see it. You see the document?
Yes.
Okay. So now this document here, you have it in your computer system, is that right?
The document you're currently sharing? Yes.
Yes. Okay. Is that document contained in a folder?
Yes.
What other documents are contained in that folder?
A copy of the complaint, the one that I sent upon Attorney Lawrence's request shortly after providing this one.
Okay. And I notice here that there's some emails, for example, an email from you to Miss Zillig that's within these notes here, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any other emails in your email account that relate to Mr. Lucky that are not in this document here?
Objection to breadth, relevance, and foundation.
Are we trying to do additional discovery here, or where are we going with
Well,
this?
we're trying to find out the extent of the damage. Yeah, we're definitely trying to find out the extent of the damage. But the objection could easily, she could just either answer yes or no if she has that information, and then we can either go further or not. But right now, we just want to find out, are there emails that aren't in this document?
You can answer if you know the answer to that question.
I do not recall.
Okay, but for example, there's one the document, the email that you sent to Miss Yu, that's not contained in this document, correct?
Correct.
So that would be at least one, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, just tell me a little bit about this document. Is this something that you make in the normal course of your business?
Like this may be created in the course of an investigation, especially if there are moving pieces with multiple different individuals involved to keep notes straight of a timeline.
Okay. So would this be considered a investigation summary for Mr. Lucky's HR complaint or something else?
No, as this is not a formal investigation summary. These are merely internal notes for my sake.
But you were investigating his complaint at this time, correct?
I never started the investigation process other than having conversations with Professional Standards Division regarding his complaint.
Okay.
As you see at the bottom of the document for September 3rd, I had informed him that internal affairs must go through the investigation process. So it was with Professional Standards Division, or formerly known as Internal Affairs.
Great. So we have asked you this question roundabout several times here, but it does seem like he made this complaint on August 14th, correct?
Which complaint are you referring to?
The complaint summary in the document that we're talking about here, the one that you just sent to us about an hour ago. Is there
The
another
complaint
complaint, ma'am?
The complaint that I sent over was the one August 29th, 2021. If you scroll down to that on your document. I believe, based on this document, that he filed a separate complaint with Internal Affairs. I do not have that complaint.
Now I understand. Those are the two complaints that you have knowledge of. Is that right?
I believe, based on this document, that there may be a complaint with Internal Affairs, but I do not have a copy of that.
Okay. And you knew that when we talked earlier today, right?
Knew that Deputy Lucky had filed a complaint with Internal Affairs or with Human Resources, or?
Where you had read this document on Monday, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you were aware, based on your knowledge that you gained from this document, at least on Monday, that Deputy Lucky had a separate internal affairs complaint, right?
I was merely jogging my memory when I reviewed this document on Monday and did not review all the details in specific.
Okay. And you didn't speak to anybody in the corporation counsel since you were subpoenaed for this case, is that right?
I have not had conversations, no.
Okay. Well, did you have any emails with anybody?
Yes.
Okay, who was that?
That would have been either Rhonda Rogers or Melinda Lawrence, simply informing me when I may be expected to testify.
Okay. So, have you, let's go back to your training here. Have you had any training on making up this kind of document?
No.
No. Okay. So why do you make up these kinds of documents? You know.
It's not formal training to create documents such as this. However, when you are trying to track numerous parts, different dates to keep the information straight and keep a timeline, it's helpful to have a document like this to refer to.
Why would you need to keep a timeline?
So, I was keeping a timeline because it appears, based on the dates in here, that there were conversations about Deputy Lucky occurring every other day or so. So it's helpful to look back and remember what was previously discussed. So while this is not part of formal training, it is certainly a helpful tool that I think many people would use to keep notes.
Okay, so was this a significant event at this time in August of 2021?
The first few dates in August 2021?
Right.
I believe when I got involved was primarily on August 18th.
Okay. And about how long did you said you met with Molly, Captain Holton, and Captain Novotny, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And that's Molly Zillig, right?
Yes.
And Captain Novotny is the gentleman who's on the line here?
Yes.
Okay. Who's Captain Holton?
Captain Douglas Holton.
Okay. And at this time, what was his relationship to you in the organizational structure?
He was a captain in the courts division at that time.
Okay. Do you know where Mr. Lucky was employed at that time?
I can assume it was with the courts division based if I had been discussing with Captain Holton.
Okay. Do you have any knowledge of why Mr. Lucky would have moved from the patrol division to the courts division at any time?
I do not know.
Okay. Did he discuss that with you at any time?
I do not recall, no.
Okay. So, so you met with Lucky virtually via Teams at 3:30. Is that true?
On August 18th of 2021, yes.
Have you met with him regarding his complaints before that?
I do not believe so, no.
Okay. And you also sent us a separate document, correct? Mr. Lucky's actual complaint?
Yes.
Okay. When did you receive that document?
In looking at the notes I provided, I received that on August 29th, 2021.
Can we clarify which document was received on August 29th, 2021?
Second
We're using
document I received from the corporation today.
Okay.
It starts, Sergeant Frederick Gladney, the union president, made verbal threats towards me, which was recorded. He also texted me, "Stop texting me, bitch, you fuck, not me." I made a complaint to Internal Affairs, now currently known as Professional Standards Division. I expressed to PSD how I fear for my safety and that I do not feel comfortable working near or around Sergeant Gladney. Does that help?
Yep.
Yes, thank you, Counsel.
Okay. And you're aware that there's an Internal Affairs complaint, but that's, other than this one here, that's the only one you're aware of, right?
This is the one I have knowledge of.
Okay. So on August 18th of 2021, you didn't have this the written complaint before you, right?
Correct.
Okay. So, but Mr. Lucky had made professional standards complaint on August 14th.
Yes, I believe that's what I was notified of.
Who notified you of that?
I do not recall, but it would have been someone in the Professional Standards Division.
Not Mr. Lucky, right?
Correct.
Okay. So is there a reason why you're meeting with Captain Novotny at the Professional Standards Division? And again, you're meeting with him at 1:30, right?
August 18th, 2021.
You got it.
And your question is why I had him in the meeting?
No, just why you met with him at 1:30, right? This is a true statement here?
Yes. So the
Okay.
meeting was regarding the email from Sergeant Baker.
Ah, well, but it was also about next steps, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay. So let's look at this email from Sergeant Baker. And how do you know that this meeting was about your meeting with Sergeant Baker, or the email from Sergeant Baker?
Based on the emails that I have in that document I provided, I had clear documentation of Sergeant Baker's email that a discussion was had for next steps to have me speak with Deputy Lucky.
Got it. Let's look at this here. So Christine Baker, she's a sergeant, right?
Yes.
Okay. Why would she send you this email, if you know?
She did not send me that email. I believe it was sent to the Professional Standards Division, who then likely involved me. However, I would need to verify that.
Okay. So what is this document here from Ms. Baker? What's the significance of this email here from Ms. Baker to you?
Give me one moment to review it.
Of course.
So based on the email from Sergeant Baker, it states that he was provided FMLA and EAP information, that he was referred to HR because they had some discussions about not feeling safe and wanting stress leave, and something like that may warrant a discussion with Human Resources, hence why I would have reached out.
So Human Resources reaches out if there's a safety issue?
More so with the stress-related issues, the FMLA, the EAP information, more so on that. However, if he had concerns or complaints about safety at work, I would have, listened to that as well and provided guidance.
Right, because you were told to do that, right?
Yes,
By who?
that was a discussion in the meeting that the next steps would be for me to reach out to him and discuss that.
Okay. Was it Molly Zillig? Was it James Novotny? Or was it Captain Holton?
I do not recall.
But it was one of those three, right?
It may have been my recommendation too. I cannot recall which one of us would have made that.
Okay. Of those three people, who's the four people? Yourself, Molly Zillig, Captain Holton, or Captain Novotny? Who's the most senior?
The most senior would be Molly Zillig, but I don't fall into that rank structure as I'm not an employee of the sheriff's office.
Okay. But you were told to find out whether Mr. Lucky was safe to go back to work, right?
No one in that meeting is my supervisor, and so it would have been a discussion on best next steps. If anything, I don't take orders from people other than my manager.
But you did discuss next steps, right?
I feel that I've answered that question, that it was determined by next steps. I was going to have a conversation with him to get more information and provide him with options.
Okay. Do you feel like you followed up on those next steps?
I had the conversation with Deputy Lucky, yes.
Okay. And that's following your about 2 hours after your conversation. Well, let's put it like this. How long did your conversation with Captain Holton, Molly, and Captain Novotny last at 1:30 on August 18th of 2021?
I do not recall.
Okay. Now, you met with Mr. Lucky virtually via Teams, right?
Yes, on August 18th, 2021.
Was there anybody else in that meeting?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, where were you when you met virtually with Mr. Lucky? Were you in your office or somewhere else?
I likely would have been at home as I primarily work remotely.
Okay. But you don't recall?
I don't recall for certain. However, I believe based on the time frame, I would have been at home.
Do you record your Teams meetings?
I do not know.
Do you know if the county has a policy of recording Teams meetings?
I do not know.
You don't know, or do you know they don't?
I don't know.
Okay. Now, the first words of Christine Baker's email to Douglas Holton is not discipline. Do you see that?
Yes,
What does that mean to you?
that means to me that the email is not related to a disciplinary incident, but that is speculation.
Okay. Do you believe that Molly, Captain Holton, Captain Novotny, and yourself adequately addressed Mr. Lucky's safety concerns?
I only feel comfortable stating that I feel that I appropriately addressed his concerns. I cannot speak for others.
Well, you said you reached a consensus at this meeting, or did I misunderstand that?
It seemed that your question was more in regards to his concerns, broad view, not specifically on that particular email exchange or day.
Okay. All right, let's look a little bit further at this document here. All right, not discipline. Deputy Lucky called me and stated that he felt unsafe at work and wanted to speak with me one-on-one and that he wanted to leave. I declined that we would speak one-on-one and stated that I would have Captain Holton and Deputy Bruno acting as union rep present. Deputy Lucky came into my office with Captain Holton and Deputy Bruno as union rep. Deputy Lucky stated that he did not feel safe working here because I could go home at any moment and Sergeant Gladney could replace me. Did I read that part right?
Yes.
Okay. And Deputy Lucky stated that he was not fearful of me or Captain Holton. Did I read that part right?
Yes.
Okay. So it indicates in this letter here that Deputy Lucky fears for his safety if Sergeant Gladney is supervising him. Is that true?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And it also says that he doesn't fear for his safety if there's other people supervising him. For example, Captain Holton. Did I read that part right?
He stated he's not fearful of Sergeant Baker or Captain Holton.
Okay. Sergeant Baker. And that's not Byers, right? That's Baker. Those are different people.
Yes.
Okay. Now, Mr. Lucky had issues with Sergeant Byer too, though, right?
I believe yes.
Okay, what were those issues?
Objection, foundation, for the record.
Well,
Okay. Do you remember?
As I recall from my testimony this morning as well, I stated that I remember her name in his complaint, but I don't recall the specifics of their interaction.
right, but you've reviewed that document since then, or no?
No, I have not reviewed that complaint document today.
Okay. Even when you sent it to us, you just sent it to us, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So I'll focus, you can still see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, and this is August 30th. Oh, Molly and Captain Novotny are in there. Do you see that part?
Yes.
So you, according to this, it says that you and Captain Novotny, again, who's here on the line here today, that you're not afraid of retaliation from, and Molly Zillig all read on this document and reviewed it together, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what does received and reviewed mean to you?
Received complaint would mean that I received it either in person, via email, via fax, a variety of methods. If I recall, most 90% of complaints I would say come through via email. So I would have received the complaint and then what I've provided direction on before, I would review with professional standards,
Okay.
which included Captain Novotny and Molly in this case.
Okay, how does that review take place?
That review may be a phone call or a Teams call, and it would be a review to determine what the next steps would be. In most cases, that's professional standards, conducting an investigation, as
Okay.
almost all complaints go through professional standards.
Great. So prior to reviewing with Molly and Captain Novotny, would you have sent Mr. Lucky's written complaint to Molly and Captain Novotny?
Are you asking if I reviewed it before I sent it to them?
Well, you can answer that.
I would have read the body of the complaint before sending it to professional standards, but I would not have read it and made notes in detail or anything like that. It would just be a review, read the document, and then I would have made the determination to appropriately take next steps.
Okay. So now I think I want to clear. When we're talking about this document, we're talking about this 1.5-page document that I've got printed out here. Do you see that?
The second one I sent today, yes.
Okay. So when you're talking about reviewing that document, did you review anything else at that time?
No, I would have only reviewed that complaint unless there were other documents that a complainant sends me. I would just review what they send me.
Okay. So when you say the body of the document, I mean, did you read this entire document or something else?
That would have been what I read and reviewed, yes.
Okay. Now back to my original question here. Prior to reviewing it with Molly and Captain Novotny, do you believe that you sent this complaint to Molly and Captain Novotny?
Yes, I would have sent it to them prior to meeting with them on the complaint so that they had the opportunity to review as well.
Great. Now, the next line there says Lucky was making his own no contact rules over the weekend in regards to Sergeant Byers. Do you see that?
Yes,
Okay. And I'm not trying to trick you here, but because we're all sort of at a disadvantage. Do you understand if this Lucky was making his own no contact rules over the weekend in regards to Sergeant Byers? Does this come from this document, do you think, or somewhere else?
I do not recall.
Okay. So if it wasn't in this document, it would have come from somewhere else, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Do you have access to the complaint? I'm going to pull it up on the screen, but if you would review it, I would appreciate it. And then we can look at it together. Okay?
Okay.
Take your time, please.
So who is supposed to be sharing the document?
I'll share it in a second.
Okay.
I've done a cursory review of the document, but I will.
Great. We'll go through it together. But that you've refreshed your recollection, is that fair to say?
In general, vaguely, yes.
Okay. Now, I looked through this document and I did a Control F search here. And I have not found the word buyers in here. Do you see that in this document anywhere? Like during your review?
I do not know.
Okay. So I'm just gonna pause this for a second. Here. Ah, there we go. Oof. Thanks for your patience there. Okay, so, and we've got this reviewed with Molly and Captain Novotny. You see that?
Yes,
So we're clear now that Lucky was making his own no contact rules over the weekend in regards to Sergeant Byers. That didn't come from Mr. Lucky's complaint, right?
correct.
Okay. Do you recall now where it came from?
I do not recall, but it likely would have been in conversation with Professional Standards Division if it was not in his complaint.
So you mean Molly and Captain Novotny, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what does this statement, Lucky was making his own no contact rules over the weekend in regards to Sergeant Byers, mean to you?
I do not recall the detail exactly. However, I believe it was in somewhat relation to that, the earlier statement that Lucky and Gladney were ordered not to have contact with each other, and that Lucky was saying the same thing about Sergeant Byers and that they were not to have contact with each other.
All right. And was that perceived as a problematic in some way?
I don't understand the question, like problematic how?
Sure. Based on your conversation with Molly and Captain Novotny, did you perceive Mr. Lucky making his own no contact rules over the weekend in regards to Sergeant Byers being problematic in any way?
If he were making his own no contact rules, yes. However, I did not look into that as the investigation was not with me.
Okay. But it's fair to say that Internal Affairs was looking into that issue at that time, correct?
Objection, speculation.
Well, based on your conversation with Molly and Captain Novotny, right?
That would be a question for the Professional Standards Division.
Sure. Can you answer my question though?
I cannot say for certain what they would or would not have looked into as part of their investigation.
I understand that. Now, my question to you is, based on your understanding of your meeting with Molly and Captain Novotny, do you believe that Professional Standards was looking into Lucky making his own no contact rules over the weekend in regards to Sergeant Byers?
Objection, asked and answered.
I think she can answer the question. So go ahead, Ms. Paul.
Yeah. I truly do not know. The meeting was to talk about that complaint and essentially determine next steps for that complaint, which was Professional Standards looking into it. So I cannot say for certain.
Okay. Now, it says here union is refusing to represent Lucky due to a conflict of interest. Do you see that?
Yes.
Is that because of Mr. Gladney or something else?
My understanding is that was due to Mr. Gladney.
Okay. So at this point, Mr. Lucky made a complaint against Mr. Gladney, and now you have knowledge that the union is refusing to represent Mr. Lucky, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And did that trigger any duties in you about the anti-retaliation provisions or something else?
Again, as I stated, this was with Professional Standards for review. And later on in the document, you see that my manager and her manager were also briefed on this matter.
Okay, but you've got independent duties, do you not, as a HR, an employee of the county? Isn't that true?
Yes.
Okay. So, based on those independent duties and the retaliation policy, did you have some duty here to look into this issue regarding the conflict of the allegations of retaliation against Mr. Lucky?
To this matter would have been referring to my manager for direction on that.
Great, let's talk about that. So you met with Arvis at that time?
Let me scroll down in the complaint.
I can look down here.
I know that I discussed with her on September 2nd of 2021.
Okay, and I don't want to be on a first name basis with her. Can you remind
Miss
me what her
Williams.
last name is?
Miss Williams.
Williams, okay, thank you. So what did you discuss with Miss Williams at this about Mr. Lucky at this time?
I do not recall the details, but it likely would have been an overview of the complaint and the steps that had been taken.
Overview of the complaint and the steps that would have been taken. Okay. And what were those steps that would have been taken?
Again, based on the document provided, it was that it was going through Professional Standards for review.
Okay. So you just discussed with Ms. Williams that HR didn't have to do anything. Is that right?
That's not what I said. It was that it was with Professional Standards for review. If we needed to be involved at any point or were asked to be involved by someone, we would have certainly assisted.
Okay. But only if, who would ask? I mean, Mr. Lucky had asked you for help repeatedly, right?
Objection assumes facts not in evidence.
I would
For the
agree. Sustained. That's sustained.
Let's go and
Thank you.
read this again. Sergeant Frederick Gladney, the union president, made verbal threats to me, which was recorded. He also texted me, "Stop texting me, bitch. You fuck, not me." Do you see that "you fuck, not me" part? What does that mean to you?
And what do you mean? What does that mean to me? That was something that Deputy Lucky alleges that Sergeant Gladney stated to him.
Okay. And in your role as an HR professional, how do you interpret that statement to mean in the employment context?
I would say allegedly, if that had happened, that it was allegedly a threat.
Okay. And do you feel like it's a threat of violence, or do you think it's something else?
I do not know.
Okay. And Mr. Gladney here, Sergeant, is a supervisor at times of Mr. Lucky and has supervisory authority over Mr. Lucky at this time, right?
He is a supervisor, yes. I do not know if he was the primary supervisor over Deputy Lucky at that time. I don't recall.
Okay. So "you fucked, not me." Do you think that refers to Mr. Lucky's impending termination or something else?
I don't
Objection
know.
calls for speculation.
Okay. She answered. She doesn't know.
Okay. So let's keep going. A supervisor slash leader and president of the union has threatened me because of my opinions towards the union. Do you see that?
Yes,
Okay, and supervisor, that means he's got employment power over Mr. Lucky, right?
he would have some leadership over Deputy Lucky, however, would not be making a termination decision if that's what you're referring to.
Okay. But what Mr. Lucky referred to as supervisor slash leader, was that accurate?
Yes,
Okay. So it's fair to say that Mr. Gladney had employment power, however attenuated, over Mr. Lucky at that time, correct?
yes,
Okay. So it's fair to say that "you fuck, not me" could refer to Mr. Gladney's power over Mr. Lucky in the employment context, right?
Objection calls for speculation.
I will sustain that.
Okay. So,
Your Honor,
now
if I
it
may,
says-
this line of questioning, it all relates to the Fred Gladney matter, which we had extensive testimony about tomorrow, at the end of which you
That's
ruled
fine.
that it was not relevant to this issue because it arose, and it specifically says in this complaint, arose out of a union matter. This is not an employment matter.
Right.
well, as we know,
Is
they treated it as an
the
employment
difference?
matter. They disciplined Mr. Gladney. The
For off-duty conduct.
right, which the policy was clear that it applied to both on-duty and off-duty conduct. And that's why you had jurisdiction over him, and that's why you dealt with it as an employment matter. So
This case is
we've
not
been,
about Fred
excuse me,
Gladney,
ma'am, we've
counsel.
been over that, but it.
Have, that's my point.
Well, no,
It has
but
already
you
been ruled
can't
on,
make
counsel. Why do you
arguments
keep
that are
going
not
back to
based on the
it?
facts and evidence here.
Okay.
And that's, I think, the problem.
All right. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on the Gladney incident.
Okay,
So if you want to get things rolling and wrap it up, that would be appreciated.
I understand that, Judge. I'll do the best I can. All right. Now, I'm gonna take you down to the penultimate paragraph. You see that one there?
you've been sharing the incorrect screen, I believe. I've been following along on my computer.
I
so-
noticed that and I appreciated it, and I was hoping you'd let me sneak by with that, but you caught me. So I will do my best to get this one on the screen here. There we go. Whew. All right, penultimate paragraph. You see that there?
Since my entire stay,
Bravo. Bravo. Since my entire stay at Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office, I've experienced racism, harassment, and retaliation. Did I read that right?
yes,
Okay. Everything was addressed in this fashion because I was under the impression that the union and attorneys for the union had already addressed these issues. Did I read that right?
yes,
Okay. I'm still being mistreated and I feel like my back is against the wall. I literally must document daily and defend myself just to keep my job. I have 4 kids to take care of and no one should have to live their lives this way. Did I read that right?
yes,
Okay, and those are accurately reflect the concerns, the race concerns, and retaliation concerns that Mr. Lucky had brought to HR formally at this time, correct?
Objection. Beyond the scope of this witness's knowledge, no foundation.
I will sustain that. You
What-
can perhaps ask the question another way.
Okay, I appreciate that. So when Mr. Lucky gave this to you in written format, that was a written complaint of race discrimination and retaliation, correct?
Objection. Calls for a legal conclusion, which is this witness is not qualified to make.
No, just under the policies here, right? You investigate the HR policies, the discrimination harassment policies, right?
Objection. Calls for foundation.
Well, because we already asked those questions here.
She has already told you she hasn't, and she didn't investigate it. She sent it to so you're misquoting her testimony.
Okay. Let's move on to the next question, please.
Okay. And you see that last sentence there where he says, I have no one to represent me, all because I was threatened. I need help, exclamation point.
yes.
Okay. And did you take that sentence, I need help, to mean Mr. Lucky was asking you for help or something else?
I took that to mean that he was filing this complaint so that it would be reviewed.
Okay. And then let's just remind me, when did you tell Mr. Lucky that the HR wasn't reviewing his complaint, but professional standards was going to review his complaint?
Based on the document I provided on September 3rd, 2021, I had informed him that IA must go through the investigation process and that I will be reviewing as well. It's my understanding that that would have been when I had informed him it was referred to professional standards.
And I'm sorry, what date?
At the end of the summary Lucky document, September 3rd, 2021.
Okay. So
However,
there's a
that's
lot
my
of
best
other things
notes and
going on here.
recollection.
And so on August 29th, he sends you the complaint, but you don't tell him that you're not going to do anything about the complaint that he asked you for help for 4 days later. Is that right?
Objection.
No.
That mischaracterizes the testimony.
Okay. She answered no.
Thank you.
Okay. 1 second. I'm going to show you our exhibit 102. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, and you know who Doug Holton is, right?
Yes.
Okay. Will you accept with me that he is sending this email to or text message to Captain Novotny?
I don't have enough details to know that this is to Captain Novotny.
Okay. So you see here on it says September 16th of 2021,
Yes.
and it says
Objection.
Lucky is get terminated. I'll be walking him up to IA shortly. Do you see that?
Your Honor, we would object to this document. This witness just stated she doesn't recognize it, so there's no foundation here for further examination.
I do not like trying to bring in exhibits between other people in through a third party who's not part of the conversation. So I do have foundation issues that way. Was there a question that you wanted to ask her?
I mean, does the county want to stipulate that there's a discussion here walk him out and to terminate him on September 16th or no?
We'll stipulate that that he was suspended on September 16th.
Right.
I think the rest of the document is hearsay. Actually, I object. Actually, the charges that's not correct date, so we will not stipulate to September 16th.
Okay.
Also, I would.
Is there another date you'd like to stipulate to?
Well, if you'd like, the charges were filed on September 22nd, 2021, I believe.
And what day was he walked out?
I do not know, counsel.
Okay. So, do you have any
For the
reason-
record, I would like to object to all of this as being relevant to the termination, which has already been ruled as beyond the scope of this complaint.
And that is true.
Right, a priori. And so now we're getting new evidence here about the fact that now that we have all these documentation here, and it looks like leading up till after the complaint, they're working up a case to get rid of him. And then ultimately, right, she says on 9/15, we just had this evidence not even a half an hour ago since the first time we learned about this. But now we understand on 9/15, that's September 15th after the complaint was filed, it's true, but it's a continuing act. This witness here sent to professional standards Mr. Lucky's complaint and informed him that he had filed an ERD complaint, and then we find out that the next day he is walked out. So
Objection.
That she sent that in August, did she not?
No. That's the actual written complaint, internal
Honor,
complaint.
I would object to counsel testifying
What we're talking
and ignoring your ruling. I object to this line of counsel's testimony.
So you're just interrupting me and let me
And
get
ignoring
my
the ALJ's,
statement out on
ignoring
the
your
record
ruling, Honor.
here so that I can get my statement out on the record here.
Okay,
So-
put your statement on the record, please.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. So, she'll do that. There are two complaints that we're talking about now. Number one is an internal complaint that Mr. Lucky filed after he was requested to. He filed a oral complaint first. Filed it one to
Objection assumes facts not in evidence.
HR. Then they had a conversation with him. First, he filed the professional standards. Then he had a conversation with this witness. Then later, he filed a written complaint. But he also filed an ERD complaint, which you can take judicial notice of. And of course, you know because you have that complaint in front of you. And then this witness here testified that she informed, and it's in these documents here, that she informed them of the complaint, as far as I understand, on the 15th of September. So we can absolutely go back to the tape and look at it and see what happened here. But as far as I understand now, she's trying to say it's irrelevant, but in fact, it's absolutely relevant. Terms and conditions of employment, she tells him that he files an ERD complaint and then he suffers retaliation. So that's why we're trying to get to this. And again, this is a reason why LERC doesn't like these a priori discovery decisions, because now we found out through this witness here that in fact there was notification to Ms. Zillig and Mr. Novotny. We went over all that. We'll be happy to play the tape again. Over about the ERD complaint. And then, lo and behold, So we'll go now that we got all that information. We need to talk to Ms. Zillig about when he was walked out. We need all of this information is now going to come in. And that's the problem here. So when you conceal documents, there can be unintended consequences.
Okay, I don't know that we've determined that they were concealed. Certainly, we can acknowledge that you had not received them, but concealed means unintentional keeping them from you, and I don't know that we've gotten there. So let's not mischaracterize where we are.
Where are we on this evidentiary issue then?
Your Honor, if I may respond to the accusations counsel just made.
Yes, please go ahead.
To correct the record, Milwaukee County has never denied that Ms. Zillig or Mr. Novotny was aware that he had filed an ERD charge. I don't think that's a shocking part of the record. I think that was discussed with both of them, and certainly counsel was certainly aware of that when he was questioning them yesterday and the day before. So again, counsel continues to mischaracterize evidence in the record and misstate what is in fact in the record, pretty egregiously, actually.
Well,
Beyond that, there's no evidence here other than the hearsay that counsel just attempted to put in that he was walked out, as he likes to say, on September 16th. Moreover, even if he were, there's nothing but innuendo. There's no direct evidence here that they're in any way related. And there's no evidence, moreover, that Molly Zillig was involved in this.
And I don't have any evidence that this witness knows anything about that.
Correct.
So,
thank you, Your Honor.
According to these documents, if I may, so on August 31st, when this witness talked to Mr. Lucky, he informed her that he had mailed a complaint to the ERD, and then I don't see any more documented conversations after September 3rd.
I'll retract that. I'm sorry, but I'm clear that there's evidence, and I'm happy to go look at the tape here and review that. But we can ask this witness again. That would probably just short circuit all this. Ma'am, when did you did you notify anybody at the Sheriff's Department that Mr. Lucky had told you that he had filed an ERD complaint?
Objection. Asked and answered. And not only that, we've already said the county's aware of the ERD complaint. It's why we're here.
Well, I'm just trying to refresh the judge's recollection so we don't have to play the tape. That was the goal of that. We admit that we already asked that question, and we're happy to go look at the tape right now and pause this until we do. So,
well, no, that's not necessary.
Question.
If Ms. Paul would like to answer that again,
yeah, if
the
Ms.
county
Paul can
withdraws its
answer.
objection.
Thank you.
I don't recall answering that question earlier. However, for the ERD, I do not recall if I informed Chief Zillig or Molly, as you know, either one, that an ERD complaint was filed by Deputy Lucky.
Okay. So that's not my recollection, and we can either, I think we're going to run out of time if we just go and look at this. I understand that you want to do that, but obviously we're going to have to review that tape on that. So I'll move on.
Thank you.
All right, on August 31st, you talked to Mr. Lucky, correct?
Yes, of 2021.
I called him at that time.
I do not recall. However, based on the notes I kept, I reviewed the complaint the day before with Molly and Captain Novotny, and I may have been reaching out to him to let him know Professional Standards was looking into that.
Okay. Now, who's Margot here?
That is Margot Franklin, the Chief Human Resources Officer for Milwaukee County.
Okay, so she's your ultimate supervisor, is that right?
She's the head of the Human Resources Department. Yes.
So you do report to her, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and she's got all the same HR reporting and investigatory requirements that you do, right?
Yes, however, she's in a different role than I am.
Describe that.
She's the Chief Human Resources Officer of Milwaukee County. So I don't believe she would normally be handling employee investigations at her level the same way a human resources business partner would be.
Okay. And Mr. Lucky says, no offense to you, but this needs to be handled at a greater level. Do you see that there?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have any follow-up conversations about Margot on Mr. Lucky sending his HR complaint to her?
I didn't have conversations about Margot. I do not know what Margot did or did not receive from Mr. Lucky.
Okay. But do you believe that the HR did anything further with his complaints after he sent them to Margot?
I do not know what action Margot
Objection.
would have taken.
Okay.
Misstates, if I can just get it for the record, counsel just misstated Ms. Paul's prior testimony. She said she doesn't know what Mr. Lucky may have sent to Margot.
Okay.
Great. So now we have the statement here, and this is by Mr. Lucky, correct me if I'm wrong, believes that if IA cases were actually investigated, he wouldn't have been suspended in the past. Did I read that right?
Yes.
Okay. So he's making here an allegation against internal affairs. Isn't that true?
Objection calls for speculation.
Well, you're the one who wrote
Yeah.
the statement, right?
But she can testify as to if she knows what she meant by that when she wrote it.
In creation of this document, that would have been notes so that I had a recollection of what was said. So that was something that I recalled Deputy Lucky stating, therefore it's what I noted in my notes.
Great. So when you noted that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you said one of the situations in which HR would take over from professional standards, the rare situations, as if somebody made an allegation against somebody in professional services. Did I understand that, or did I miss that?
I said it in a different capacity than what you're referring to.
Explain to me how.
Deputy Lucky, based on the notes that are provided, did not make a statement against a employee in professional standards saying that they were specifically doing something. It was not about a specific employee. It was about the division as a whole. That is different.
Well, he's saying that IA cases were actually investigated, right?
Yes.
Let's be clear. Who's the supervisor of IA?
Captain Novotny is the person over the professional standards division. However, Molly Zillig also oversees that division in her capacity
James
as well,
Novotny
and
was
ultimately the
specific
sheriff.
person that you said that if there was an accusation against, that would trigger some other reaction on your part, correct?
That was a
Objection
hypothetical
asked and
example.
answered.
Okay. So if IA cases, when he's referring to IA cases were actually being investigated, James Novotny is the one who's in charge of actually investigating IA cases, right?
Objection assumes facts and evidence. We don't know what time frame is at issue.
I mean, ma'am, if you just look here, you can see that the date there is August 31st, 2021.
Can I object that he's arguing with the witness? And then, Your Honor, can you
Right.
instruct him to be more respectful of this witness and towards this witness? He can ask his questions much more respectfully, please.
You just interrupted
Attorney.
my question to make a objection that
I
there
did.
was, excuse me, ma'am, that there was no
Okay.
foundation and we were unable to know what date we were talking about. So when you look on this document, there is a series of bullet points under a date. And I know I've made this complaint several times here, but these kind of objections, again, are both speaking objections, they're communicating to this witness what this attorney wants them to say. But in addition to that, they're extremely prejudicial because they're so disruptive. So, I mean, to the extent, again, that it's plain on the face that there's a date that we're talking about is August 31st of 2021, I object to that objection.
Your
Can
Honor,
you
now that
move
he
on?
has specified a date, I will withdraw my objection on foundation. I will, however, ask that you instruct him to be respectful of the witness.
Can we all be on our best behavior here? I think we can all use a little more kindness in our life. So if you would, Attorney Hitchcock Cross, try to be as nice as you can be to this witness, that would be appreciated. I understand you have your, I understand you have your way of doing things, but sometimes they can come across a little bit more differently than perhaps you intend.
No, I understand. And I'm just gonna make it clear to everybody that I got a job to do.
Absolutely.
Okay, so whether personal feelings don't, and ma'am, Ms. Paul, I don't have any personal animosity towards you or not. I don't have any personal animosity to Ms. Lawrence or not. We are at opposing parties here, and I am advocating for Mr. Lucky. So to the extent that facts come out that are unpleasant to you or Ms. Lawrence or anybody else at the county, that's Mr. Novotny, for example, I regret that, but I won't apologize for it. Okay,
It's understood.
thank you. So now, before we were interrupted, I don't believe we got the answer to our question. So it says that he believes if IA cases were actually investigated. Did you understand that to mean James Novotny's internal affairs or something else?
That would mean the Professional Standards Division in my eyes.
Sure, James Novotny's professional standards divisions, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And again, that's the same, Mr. Novotny, that if you said that if a deputy made an accusation against, that would trigger HR to get involved in that investigation, correct?
It would not necessarily mean that Human Resources is investigating that complaint. We would just merely look into to see if there is a potential conflict of interest. I meant it more as if it was about somebody personally in the Professional Standards Division, not the division as a whole, without, further evidence of that.
Well, did you ask him who in internal affairs when you discussed with him? Did you ask him who internal affairs he was talking about?
I do not recall.
Okay, but you were conducting some sort of investigation at this time, correct?
His complaint was with the Professional Standards Division for review. I was informing him of that fact, I believe. However, I did note comments that he made in his conversation with me.
No, ma'am. We're not talking about September 3rd. We're talking about August 30th and August 31st.
Yes, I am
on
referring
August
to August
30th, he gave you a
31st.
written complaint, right? And then on August 31st, you had a conversation with him about it, correct?
He sent the complaint August 29th. I received and reviewed it on the 30th, and then I called him on the 31st.
Okay, and at that point, you hadn't told him, because it wasn't the 3rd yet, that his concerns weren't going to be addressed by HR, correct?
I do not recall what date I notified him that Professional Standards would be reviewing that.
Okay. So, again, now back to my question here. When he said that he believes if IA cases were actually investigated, you never asked him or investigated what he was discussing there, right?
I would object that assumes facts not in evidence.
Well, can we just ask the question, did you understand Mr. Lucky to be making a complaint against the Internal Affairs Division or anyone in it?
In that comment, no.
No, it was just one of those things where he's talking about the county or the Professional Standards Division, but Professional Standards Division isn't made up of individuals or headed by an individual. Is that what you were considering?
Objection, argumentative.
So unless Mr. Lucky said specifically Mr. James Novotny, you were never going to follow up on that complaint, correct?
If I was provided more specific information, or if he had filed a complaint specifically regarded to the Professional Standards Division, I would have looked into that. However, he was merely making a comment, as I noted.
A comment and a formal discussion about his complaint that he had written 2 days before. That's right?
I cannot say that the two are necessarily related.
Okay. And what training do you have in understanding of whether or not his complaints against Internal Affairs rose to the level of an accusation against Mr. Novotny or something else?
The training that I have is in the Professional Standards Division. I have not been in the Internal Affairs Division. I have not been in the Professional Standards Division. I have not been in the Professional Standards Division. I have not been in the Professional Standards Division. I have not been in the Professional Standards Division. I have not been in the Professional Standards Division. I have not been in the Professional Standards Division. I have not been in the Professional Standards Division. I have not been in the Professional Standards Division. I have not been in the Professional Standards Division. I have not been in the Professional Standards Division. I have not been in the Professional Standards Division. I have not been in the Professional Standards Division. I have not been in the Professional Standards Division. I have not been in the Professional Standards Division. I have not been in the Professional Standards Division. The statement that he provided does not mean to me that he is filing a complaint against Mr. Novotny that he would like looked into.
Okay. But it does alert you to the fact that he doesn't feel that the internal investigation department is actually investigating his discrimination complaints, right?
Objection assumes facts, not evidence. Just noting.
Okay, noted for the record.
Thank you.
You can answer if you're able to.
Please repeat the question.
Sure. He's telling you here that he doesn't believe his IA cases are actually being investigated, right? His complaints are being through internal affairs are actually being investigated, right?
It appears that he's referring to his internal affairs cases.
Right. His complaints or his cases? Because we got
I
two.
have cases written in my notes.
Okay. And so what that means to you, what?
Internal affairs cases are more so pertaining to, disciplinary matters perhaps, or matters of attendance or performance or behavior or work rule violations.
Okay.
That's my understanding of cases.
So at that time, you were aware that Mr. Lucky had disciplinary cases against him by internal affairs, right?
In his comment to me, yes.
Right. Well, did you think he was lying to you at that time or something else?
I did not review to verify if he had cases with internal affairs or not.
Okay. But you were required to do so, right?
I don't
Objection
understand the question.
Assumes facts, not evidence.
Well, according to your knowledge of the HR retaliation policies, you were required to look into this, right?
Objection assumes facts, not evidence. Also,
Okay. I'll allow her to answer if she can.
Asking if I was supposed to investigate his internal affairs cases?
No. I'm asking you whether or not, according to the retaliation and anti-discrimination policies for the county that you're in charge of, at least in part enforcing, that you understood there that he was saying that internal affairs was not looking into his complaint.
objection misstates her prior testimony, arguing with the witness.
Overruled, you can answer if you can.
Again, the comment that I have in my note is about internal affairs cases, not internal affairs complaints that he had made to internal affairs.
Awesome.
He was referring to internal affairs cases.
Okay. So he then says he doesn't believe it is fair that he is being victimized. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. What steps, and he says that he's being switched due to the order not to have contact with Gladney. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So according to your understanding, Mr. Gladney threatens to assault Mr. Lucky, and it's Mr. Lucky whose shift is being altered to suit Mr. Gladney, correct?
That is how Deputy Lucky communicated it to me, yes.
Okay. Does that sound like to you in your position as an HR professional that the county is adequately addressing Mr. Lucky's complaint?
The county was adequately addressing the complaint by putting it through the normal process of referring it to the Professional Standards Division. And as you see in that same note, followed up with Molly on the conversation, I would have provided additional details if I had any to provide her to assist with that investigation.
Okay, but my question was to you about whether or not making Mr. Lucky had told you that Mr. Gladney had threatened to assault him, correct?
Correct. That was in his complaint.
And at this time, you were then aware that the county's response was to, at least the sheriff's office response was to make Mr. Lucky switch his shift rather than Mr. Gladney, right?
I do not recall the terms of that agreement.
Objection.
I was not involved in making that decision.
So she knows what Mr. Lucky had told her.
Right.
We can see on here what her notes reflect he said.
Okay. I appreciate that. Now, there's another thing here that says he does not have time to find his own counsel for IA interview. Did you see that part?
Yes.
What does that mean to you?
That means to me that he does not have time to find counsel for an upcoming internal affairs interview.
Okay. What kind of interview was that, if you know?
I do not know, but if it was with internal affairs, it likely would have been related to a case.
Okay, that's a disciplinary case against Mr. Lucky, right?
Probably, yes.
Okay. And you know that because you discussed that with Molly Zillick, for example, the next day, right?
I don't recall the exact conversations. But yes, on September 2nd, I was informed of when his IA interview was scheduled for.
Okay. And at that time, you understood that it was for an IA disciplinary case, not for Mr. Lucky's discrimination and retaliation complaints, right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Did you know what the nature of the IA complaint was?
I do not recall, no.
No. Even after you discussed it with Ms. Zillig and reviewed your notes for today, you still don't recall?
I reviewed this document and I did not go back to look at anything else.
Okay. Now it
So
says
I reviewed this and then I reviewed the complaint that you sent that we went through moments ago as well.
I appreciate that. So it says discussed summary in broad detail with Shartesia and Arvis. Do you see that?
Yes.
What is summary there?
Summary would be from the time I would have received the complaint or details surrounding that complaint. That's what that would mean.
Is that this document or something else?
I do not recall if it was specifically this document or if it was, but it was likely my notes on that complaint and where we were at.
Right. So because summary there is a noun, right?
Yes.
I mean, again, bravo. I just have to be clear. I appreciate that. So, now it says discussed. Would that have been over the telephone, in person? How would you have discussed that then?
It probably would have been a Teams call, as that's my primary method of communication.
Okay. And it's 2021, so you may have been working at home at that point. Does that sound right?
Yes, primarily.
Okay. I don't need to get into your business. I just want to understand how these transmissions are going. Okay. So, and again, Shartesia is who?
Shartesia Carson Clark is the Employee Relations Director. She is my Arvis Williams' supervisor.
Oh, okay. So that's the pretty high level meeting then, right?
I wouldn't consider it a high level meeting. My manager will involve her manager if it's appropriate.
Okay, about how many times does that happen in a year?
I do not know.
Okay, how many times does it happen in the last 6 months?
I do not know.
Can you recall one instance in the last 6 months?
Yes.
Okay, was that a discussion? Can you recall 5 incidents in the last 6 months?
Yes.
Okay. And were these about discrimination complaints and retaliation complaints or something else?
They could be a variety of matters.
Great. And were they about discrimination and retaliation complaints or something else?
The example we're talking about here for September 2nd, I have that I spoke about this with Shartesia and Arvis. I do not specifically recall others that we have discussed in the past.
Okay. So it's fair to say that the only time you recall discussing a discrimination and retaliation complaint with both Shartesia and Arvis is this one time for Mr. Lucky on September 2nd of 2021, correct?
Objection misstates the evidence.
I think she can answer the question. Thank you.
I don't feel that that's what I said. I'm saying I don't recall. It may have happened, but I can't recall the specifics of those scenarios without looking back at records or,
Right.
thinking about it having more time to think about it than being put on the spot.
No, I understand. But sitting here, you are on the spot, unfortunately. So sitting here today, you're not able to recall any other incidents of discussing summaries in broad detail with Shartisha and Arvis regarding discrimination and retaliation complaints, right?
I would object
can't
that this
think-
is vague. I don't,
I think she can answer. I think she's starting to.
Think of specific examples. I'm trying to provide specific examples to you. Arvis may take matters to Shartisha for review without me. I may discuss with Shartisha without Arvis, depending on availability. It's not a formal process, so to speak, for every complaint or every whatever. Even separate processes where Shartisha and Arvis and I discuss those matters.
Great. So after all of that, it's now fair to say that this is a pretty significant meeting, right?
objection misstates prior testimony, for the record.
For the record. Did you consider this to be a
answering?
significant? Yeah, Ms. Paul, did you consider this to be a significant meeting that's reflected on September 2nd, 2021?
Perhaps I would like some clarification on what significant means, because in my job roles, I talk with my supervisor multiple times a day. I speak with Shartisha, a few times each week. So to call it a significant conversation, to me, it's unclear what that means, because I'm having these conversations about serious matters on a weekly, if not daily basis sometimes
All right.
in my role with employee relations.
So then it's fair to say on September 2nd, you met with your supervisor and your supervisor's supervisor, but then you also met with Molly, right?
Molly informed me that his IA interview was scheduled for a different date. I do not recall if that was simply a notification, an email, a call. I do not recall the method of communication there.
Great. Do you recall what you knew about his internal affairs interview at that time?
Objection asked and answered, for the record.
You can answer if you can.
So I feel that I'm getting confused right now. I don't understand the question as far as Molly informed me his IA interview was now scheduled for September 3rd. I have that written in my notes. Is that referring back to something else that we discussed, or?
Well, right, because in the previous date, on August 3rd, the previous date point anyways, on August 31st of 2020, he says that he does not have time to find his own counsel for IA interview, right?
Okay, yes.
And the fact that he's saying he needs his own counsel, that also tells us that this is about complaints against Mr. Lucky and not Mr. Lucky's complaints, right?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Sure. The fact that Mr. Luck, based on your knowledge and experience as an HR employee, the fact that it says, and the fact that you wrote this document, the fact that he says that he needs to have time to obtain an attorney, write his own counsel for an internal affairs interview, that's also an indication that this internal affairs interview is disciplinary in nature and not a complaint by Mr. Lucky. Right?
I believe so, yes.
I would object that it calls for speculation, but she's already answered, so.
Yeah, but again, I don't know for certain, but I believe so.
Okay. Now, it says here that Molly is telling you, and correct me if I'm wrong, that he is Lucky informed Lieutenant Smoot of something. Is that right?
The Deputy Lucky informed Lieutenant Smoot of something, yes.
Okay. So it's fair to say that information came from Molly and nobody else?
Yes, based on my notes.
Okay. And then what's this? He's taking FMLA starting Tuesday, 9/7. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. What discussion, if any, did you have with Molly Zillig about Mr. Lucky taking FMLA on starting Tuesday, November 7th?
I do not recall.
Okay. Did you ever discuss Mr. Lucky with Mr. Smoot?
I do not recall.
Did you ever discuss Mr. Lucky with Mr. Novotny?
Based on this document, yes, I did speak about Mr. Lucky's complaint with Captain Novotny on August 30th, 2021.
Okay, and beyond that, did you ever speak with him?
I don't recall outside of this note.
Okay, so it's fair to say that if it's not in this document, you don't recall?
I don't recall, correct.
Okay. All right, so on September 3rd of 2021, it says you followed up with Lucky on the status of his complaint. Did you see that?
Yes,
Okay, and it says informed him that IA must go through investigation process and will be reviewing as well. Did you see that part?
yes,
Okay, now does it say, or it says I will be reviewing as well, okay? But that's not what you explained to us, or did I misunderstand that?
meaning when I said that the complaint was referred to the Professional Standards Division?
Right, and then you didn't have to investigate anymore after it was referred to the Professional Standards Division, and you said that you told them that, right?
Objection misstates prior. Bulk of this testimony. Just free to answer.
Yes. Go ahead if you can.
Yeah, so as I stated previously, Professional Standards was in charge of reviewing this complaint. However, we will sometimes review the final summary of that if needed, just to ensure that we think appropriate steps were taken. But that's what I was referring to.
Okay, did you keep your word to Mr. Lucky? Did you review it as well?
I do not recall the final determination, as I believe he was either suspended or discharged related to a separate matter.
So it's fair to say that the investigation process was never completed because he was discharged, right?
Objection calls for speculation.
Yeah, I don't know that she would necessarily know what IAD did with it.
That's why we put the question to her, and if she doesn't know, then she can say she doesn't know. But to have
Okay.
Mr. Lawrence answer for her is abusive, and we've been over this time and time again. That's what the
All right.
problem is here. She's just put the answer into the witness's mouth.
Counsel,
Okay.
if she knows,
Ms. Paul, if you know, can you answer the question that was posed to you?
Yes, so I do not recall.
Is there a pattern, Ms. Paul, between objections by Ms. Lawrence and your answers?
objection, counsel, calls for a legal conclusion or opinion that this witness is not qualified.
To identify patterns in her own behavior?
Counsel, I'm tired of the
Oh.
personal attacks. I'm entitled to represent my client and their due process rights by stating my objections and the basis therefore in the record so that I can defend them when you appeal to LERC or when we appeal to LERC, whatever happens with LERC. I need to make a record here to combat your abusive behavior.
And I will also be able to tell if her answers are changing depending upon what Attorney Lawrence says or doesn't say.
Okay, great. I think we've got that part clear. So it says called at 8:20 a.m. 5 minutes. You see that?
Yes.
Okay. And I just want to back up for a second. Have you handled any other complaints into Mr. Gladney at any time?
Mr.
I do
Gladney or
not.
Mr. Lucky?
Mr.
I'm
Gladney.
sorry.
So we would object to relevance for the record.
Okay. I'll just let her answer if she knows.
Yeah, no, I do not recall.
How about Ms. Byers?
I do not recall.
Okay. If you had intaked any complaints against either of those two people, would you have had notes like you have here?
It would depend on the complaint. Sometimes they are referred directly to Professional Standards, and I don't have further communication with the employee once they've been informed it's referred. So it really is a case-by-case basis with each complaint.
Okay. And you haven't spoke to Corporation Counsel on those issues either, right?
I have not.
Okay. And Corporation Counsel didn't ask you for any of those documents? They exist, is that right?
Objection assumes facts not in evidence.
Well, she can answer if she was requested to produce any documents.
I was not requested to produce documents you're referring to Gladney and Byers?
For example, or any documents
Yeah.
relating to this case?
That I'm confused.
Okay. Were you requested by the Corporation Counsel to produce any documents in relation to this case?
I do not recall, but given that I provided this information, I may have provided it related to the ERD complaint that was filed and assisted with gathering those records, but outside of that scope, no, I don't recall. I don't think
Great.
so.
Explain to me how you assisted in gathering those records.
I stated I may have.
Great. Explain to me how you may have in the normal course of your business.
So if someone requested records, either via open records or whether it was from counsel, I may have to assist with pulling a field file or just ensuring that the appropriate person gets that email to pull the necessary files.
Okay. And you don't recall whether or not you were asked to do that in this case here?
I do not recall if when I sent those documents to Mary Yu, I believe it was in relation to that ERD complaint.
Okay. Did Mary Yu ask you for those documents or did somebody else?
I would have to go back and look at the email.
Can you do that, please?
Okay, it looks like Corporation Counsel had requested documentation, and then there was an email that Mary Yu would gather that information that was separate from professional standards, but would be sending along my materials as well.
And was that a general Corporation Counsel email or was there a specific person at Corporation Counsel?
I believe based on the email, it went to a few individuals in Corporation Counsel.
Great. Who are those individuals?
But based on each part of the email, there's different people involved. So
Great. Name them all, please.
okay. I have Catherine West, Melinda Lawrence, William Davidson, Scott Brown, and Steph Mackey.
Great. And William Davidson, do you recognize him to be on this stream right now?
Yes.
Okay. And Melissa Lawrence, can you identify her? Is she on this stream right now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, hopefully we're getting on the final stretch. All right, Judge, we're going to take a 5-minute break. I'm going to talk with my client and hopefully we can wrap this up, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, it's 4:02. Let's come back at 4:10. Thank you.
Ooh. Judge, you know what they'd ask us if we were at Trader Joe's? They say, "You got any big plans for the weekend?"
Pardon me?
That's what they always say at Trader Joe's. Is you got any big plans for the weekend?
Oh, well, I don't go to Trader Joe's, so I wouldn't know. But
You
yeah.
gotta play the numbers with jokes. You gotta play the statistics.
Well, it helps if the person on the other end understands what's going on. So,
That's right.
all right. So here we are. Are we just about done with this witness, Attorney
Yes, ma'am.
Hitchcock Cross?
I
Okay.
appreciate that. I think I've got basically 2 more questions, keeping in mind that we may need to call her back. So question number 1 here is, do you know who Molly Zillig is?
Asked and answered.
Yeah, I
Who is
think she
Molly Zillig?
identified her. You
You
can tell.
identified her as somebody from the Corporation Counsel, is that right?
No.
Not earlier, she didn't, but you can answer
Not-
the question, please.
Wrong person.
Oh,
Wrong person.
okay.
Katie West. That's what I'm saying. Can you identify Katie West, please? I think you're muted still.
I'm so sorry. Yes, she's an attorney for Corporation Counsel.
Okay. And she also, do you know if she does any PRB hearings?
Yes,
Okay. And do you know if she prosecuted the PRB hearing against Mr. Lucky?
I do not recall.
Okay. Now, final set of questions here. You've got, do you know if you knew that at one time?
No, I don't recall because sometimes I know for a fact that other attorneys from Corporation Counsel sometimes assist, for example, if she's out of the office or depending on caseload. So I've seen other attorneys, so I wouldn't feel comfortable stating for certain.
So you don't have specific knowledge?
No,
Okay, but she's one of the people that you sent these documents to in regards to Mrs. Lucky's ERD claims, right?
Objection misstates the evidence.
No, I'm sorry. She was one of the people who instructed you to send these documents to Miss Yu, correct?
Objection, I think that still misstates the evidence.
Right. Well, she was on email chains in any event. Is that correct?
she was on the email chain initially requesting the documents. She was not on any email with me. It got forwarded kind of through a few separate people. So
Okay, and the only document that you sent to Miss Yu was this summary here or something else?
it was the summary and then a copy of the complaint as well.
Okay. And after that point, did you ever have any discussions with anybody about Mr. Lucky's case?
I do not, after I sent the documents
Correct.
in regards to his ERD complaint, his what case exactly, just to make sure I'm answering correctly.
Any of them?
I may have been on more emails regarding documents, but I do not recall offhand what emails or communications I would have had regarding him.
You've got the access to those emails right now, right?
I could certainly do a cursory
No, no.
glance.
I just want to be clear that that's obtainable knowledge, right?
Yes.
So final set of questions here. Based on your knowledge of the retaliation policy, was there any requirement or even goal to try to keep Mr. Lucky's identity confidential?
He did not request to keep his identity confidential in the matter of the complaint.
Did you discuss the confidentiality with him at any time?
We often discuss that, because it was referred to professional standards, I can't speak to what their practice is regarding how they notify employees of confidentiality.
Great, we're talking about you then. Did you discuss with him the possibility of keeping his retaliation complaint confidential at any time?
I do not believe so, but I do not recall.
And you didn't do that before you immediately talked, or you talked to Ms. Zillig, or before you talked to him, right?
I do not believe I had conversations about that.
Okay, and you took no steps whatsoever to protect Mr. Lucky's complaint, knowledge of Mr. Lucky's complaint from Professional Standards Division, right?
The normal route would have been to refer it to professional standards, and I did not see information in his complaint that would warrant it to not go to professional standards for review.
Well, except the fact that he was complaining about professional standards not being fair, right?
I believe that was the comment in my summary notes later on, not in the actual complaint that he sent to me.
Right, it was in the notes of your conversation that you had with him the day after he filed the written complaint to you, correct? You're looking at the document now to refresh your memory?
Correct.
Well, okay. So then, so it's fair to say that your HR office took no steps to protect, well, no, one other question. So Mr. Lucky had filed a complaint with professional standards that you were aware of about, against Mr. Gladney, right?
Yes,
Then you had a conversation with Ms. Zillig, Mr. Novotny, and Mr. Holton, right?
yes,
Okay. Then you discussed Mr. Lucky's safety issues after having a conversation with Mr. Novotny, Ms. Zillig, and Mr. Douglas about next steps, right?
yes,
Okay. And then after that point, you encouraged Mr. Lucky to write a formal HR complaint to you, correct?
I did not, no.
He just wrote a formal HR complaint to you after you talked with him for no reason, is that right?
I did not inform him to file a complaint. I do not have notes from that email.
Right, but you're looking at your notes. I'm asking you for your recollection.
Yeah, I do not recall that he asked me how to file a complaint related to that.
Okay. And then he did file a complaint related to that, coincidentally or something else, but he did do it, right?
Correct.
And only after talking to you, right?
It was after speaking with me, yes.
Okay.
It appears to be a week and a half or 2 weeks later.
Okay. And then you also reminded him that you will take all allegations seriously, right?
Yes,
And you also advised him that you will not permit retaliation, right?
yes.
But in
That's
fact, you
standard
had already given
process.
all of this information directly to professional standards, right?
I gave his complaint to professional standards on August 30th of 2021.
So it's fair to say that not only did you take no steps to protect Mr. Lucky's identity and protect him from retaliation, you actively participated in his retaliation by giving his complaint to professional standards, correct?
Objection. Arguing with the witness assumes facts not in evidence and calls for an ultimate legal conclusion that this witness is not qualified to make, which is within the purview of the ALJ, which we've made this objection repeatedly already.
Yeah, I think that's the ultimate decision I have to make,
Right.
Attorney
So
Hitchcock
let's be
Cross.
clear, because we're talking about two things. There's the county's retaliation policy that this person right here is in charge of, or at least participates in enforcing. And so that one definition of retaliation. And then there's another ERD definition under WIFA of retaliation. And now if she's going to object on that, that's a different matter. But I certainly have not asked her in her capacity as an HR employee for her interpretation of whether or not there's an ERD retaliation here. I've only asked her under the policy that we've went over several times and that we've been discussing here for the last series of questions. So under that, is there still an objection?
Assumes facts not in evidence.
Okay, can you restate the question, please?
Okay. So this is when you have this lineup of build up here, and then you finally get to the right question, and then you get an interruption here that's, abusive. That's again. So we'll start over. It's almost 4:21. Some people might want to go home, others don't apparently. So let's look at it like this. You didn't take any steps to protect Mr. Lucky's identity from retaliation from sheriff's office employees, correct?
Objection. Assumes facts not in evidence.
Well, I think she can ask,
Sorry, what
did
facts
you
does it
take
assume?
steps, did you take steps to conceal, I guess, Mr. Lucky's identity? Is that?
I do not believe I did take
No.
steps to conceal his identity from professional standards, no.
No, and in fact, you informed professional standards of his identity and the nature of his complaint, right?
Yes,
Okay. And you didn't tell Mr. Lucky that you were going to do that before you did it, right?
I did not.
No, and in fact, you told him that you were going to help him and that you would protect him from retaliation, right?
Objection. Assumes facts not in evidence.
Well, I think she can answer. We'll just let her.
In any investigation process, I am involved in ensuring that there is not retaliation and that complaints are taken seriously. They go through the process of being referred to Professional Standards Division, and that is the process for Sheriff's Office employees.
But you didn't do that here, right?
Objection. Arguing with the witness and assumes facts not in evidence.
That's what I get to do here.
You don't get to badger the witness. I object
Nobody's
that
badgering her. She's not answering the question because you keep interrupting.
Judge, can we get a ruling on
Well,
this?
Yes. I
I think
So
that
is the question, did you protect him from retaliation? In your opinion? Ms.
Yes,
Paul?
Judge.
Okay, you would like, okay. I believe that I took appropriate steps to protect him and to ensure his complaint was taken seriously.
You're on mute.
Yeah,
That would have been the question that I would have asked if this was not an adverse examination. But since it is an adverse examination, I didn't ask that question. I
Okay.
said, isn't it true that you did not protect Mr. Lucky? And then I asked her, wasn't it in fact the truth that you did inform professional standards of Mr. Lucky's identity and the nature of his complaint?
objection. The record speaks for itself.
And then that's a compound question.
All right. It seems like we're not going to get the answer to this question, so we'll pass the witness for today.
Okay. All right. Did you have anything else for this witness, Ms. Lawrence?
If I can ask 2 questions, I apologize. I know we've taken
Sure.
up quite a bit of Ms. Paul's time.
Okay.
Ms. Paul, what was the date of the email in which you sent Mary Yu your notes?
let me pull that up quickly. They were sent to her on September 15th, 2021.
Thank you. And Ms. Paul, did you ever conclude that Mr. Lucky suffered retaliation?
I mean, in what sense, ma'am? You can't play the game both ways.
I'm asking her if she reached it. Did you reach a conclusion on Mr. Lucky? I will withdraw
Ask for a legal conclusion.
I will withdraw the last question. Ms. Paul, did you ever complete your investigation of Mr. Lucky's complaints?
I did not know, as the matter was referred to professional standards for review and conclusion.
Did you reach any conclusions about his complaints at any time?
I did not know.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Attorney Hitchcock-Cross?
No, have a great
Okay.
weekend, everybody.
All right. Council, are we going to find new dates on the calendar now or at a date to be ascertained?
Can we excuse Ms. Paul at this time?
Oh, yes, Ms. Paul, I'm so sorry. Thank you very much for your testimony today. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you for
know.
your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so do we want to look for dates to continue this matter? Or do we want to do that via email?
No, that should be fine. So there was some general talk, or there was some possibility of the first week in March. Is that still open?
I do believe the week starting March 6th, I have a matter that fell off the calendar. So I am open that entire week.
I don't have anything that week either.
Oh, my thing just closed down. Okay. So let's get this back up here. How does that look for you, Attorney Lawrence?
I actually believe that would be fine.
All right. And how many days are we going to need?
I am not available on the 10th.
Okay. So let me see where I am here. Okay. Well, let's start it on the 6th. Let's plan on the 6th and 7th. Are we going to need more than that? 6th, 7th, 8th?
I don't know how much they got left. I mean, we might be able to do. Mr. Lucky's got to testify yet. We got to re-examine our witnesses, so we might need 2 more days even, unfortunately.
Okay.
Wow.
Is it easier to do the 6th and 7th or the 7th and the 8th?
Let me
Well,
check.
did counsel just state that he believes he has 2 more days to conclude his case?
Oh, was that a we as in you and your client, or we as in both parties?
Oh, I couldn't speak for them.
Oh,
But I
okay.
mean, Mr. Lucky might take. I mean, look, we got to undo this damage, and we're not going to be like held down for it. So I think 3 days
Okay.
is going to be appropriate.
All right, well, let's just plan the 6th, 7th, and 8th. And
Well-
let's do, oh, is the 6th not good for you?
No, the 6th is fine, Your Honor, but if he's taking 3 days, I think we're going to need at least a day for the county to present and
Okay.
report
No, no, no,
5 days worth
I
of
was
testimony.
proposing 2, and then I think she added 1 more for you.
Okay.
I don't have any
All
objection to you having all the time you need.
Well, let's do the 6th, 7th, and 8th. Try and keep the 9th open in the event that we need it.
Great. You'll send out a notice and invitations, I assume?
I will do so.
Awesome.
Oh, Your Honor, actually,
Yes.
can we hold these dates, but maybe not ink them entirely, because I will have to determine availability of all the people, not only on our witness
Yes.
list, but I guess of whatever Mr. Hitchcock
Yes.
Cross would like
So
to
we
have
will all
present.
pencil in those dates, but it is depending upon witness availability.
If Mr. Hitchcock Cross would like us to make them available during that day, we can check if he wants to provide witnesses that he
Great.
intends to
Let's
call.
try to coordinate again, like we did before.
Yes, let's try and do that.
Great. Maybe if you guys answer, that'll help move that along. Just 1 second here. And I just want to be clear on the record that we're asking for the videos to be uploaded as soon as possible.
Oh, yes. And the woman who does that is not here today. I don't know if she's here tomorrow, but you should get them by Monday.
Awesome.
Okay.
Your Honor, I do believe that the county will be seeking to make transcripts. Do you want us to
Okay.
hold off on that, or can we start that process as soon as they're uploaded?
You can start that process whenever you would like.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anything else before we adjourn?
No, thank you all. Pleasure to meet
Okay.
you guys.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Fair. Okay. Bye-bye.